When Rabbit arrived to the gate, the boys locked up David's bike and headed inside to the principal's conference room. Across the main entrance stood a huge yellow banner. ASB school elections are coming. The message was written in rounded letters with the O's in the shape of balloons. No doubt Miss Salas's handiwork. She loved to decorate her letters every chance she got. And since she ran the ASB leadership class, she had plenty of practice making school posters. Efren pulled on the door and propped it open with his foot. After you, Mr. President. David hiked up his pants. I could so get used to this. Yeah, I bet. Efren could see Miss Salas along with Jennifer Huerta and her super quiet sidekick, Han Pham, waiting inside. Should I announce your arrival? Nah, I got this, David said in his usual swag, now replaced with an uncomfortable wobble from the wedgie he'd inadvertently given himself. Buenos vendidos, niños, said Mrs. Salas, standing over a pink box filled with different colored conchas. The tire-like thread of brown, yellow, and pink sugar coating made the bread look like the 4x4 tires off a toy Tonka truck. Thank you for your interest in public service. What positions are you here for? David tapped his chest. Just me, for school president. She turned to Efren. Are you sure? We do have a few positions open, if you're interested. Efren shook his head. No, thank you. I'm just here to support David. Miss Salas pressed her lips together. Back when I was a kid, school elections were a big deal. One year we had 11 candidates, but that was then. Well, anyway, would you two boys like a concha? They're freshly baked. Efren remembered what Amma had taught him about minding his manners, about accepting things from other people. Don't be a pediche, she'd say. She had this theory about how people only offer things because they feel obligated by the whole manners thing. Kind of like when the family has company and Amma offers to feed them despite the fact that it would mean digging into the family's weekly rations. So Efren shook his head, hoping for a second request before accepting a piece. But not David. No way. He had already snatched up a yellow and a brown concha before Miss Salas had even offered any. That's fine, boys. We got plenty for seconds. She sighed, looking at the empty chairs around the conference table. And thirds and fourths, possibly fifths. The turnout was low. And since only the students who attended the meeting could run for office, it meant these two girls, Jennifer and Han, were all that stood in the way of David's presidency. For the most part, Jennifer was a nice girl, but she had a habit of always raising her hand in class, whether the teacher asked a question or not. Not to mention automatically correcting anyone who messed up an answer, including teachers. But Efren didn't mind her. He thought she usually made good points. As for Han, she didn't say much. In fact, kids at school simply referred to her as that girl who sits next to Jennifer. During the short meeting, Miss Salas went into a great deal about each of the ASB job descriptions and expectations. Miss Salas explained how, with only 2 candidates running, the loser would automatically be given the vice president position. Efren studied David's competition, especially the way the girls locked into Miss Salas's every word and took careful notes. And David, well, he just slouched back, paying attention only to the sugary bread sitting across from him. Not exactly presidential behavior. Still, Jennifer had a way of rubbing students the wrong way. A lot of kids didn't like that she seemed to know everything, a possible side effect of the fact that she always seemed to be reading. David definitely stood a good chance. His cool swag and carefree attitude could go a long way against her. He might actually win. Efren and David raced to their first class after the ASB meeting ended. Mr. Garrett was not someone to mess with. Rumor had it that he was the only teacher at school to ever send an entire classroom to the principal's office, all at one time. The strange thing about Mr. Garrett was that he wasn't always like this. Last year, during the 6th grade Renaissance Assembly, the principal, Mrs. Carey, introduced him as the district's teacher of the year. Mr. Garrett ran up to the stage, high-fiving kids on his way. Everyone in the gymnasium stood and cheered. Mr. Garrett was all smiles that day and seemed like a totally different person. Since Mr. Garrett taught only honors history, Efren knew he'd be having him the following year. Efren couldn't wait. Only something happened to him. It was as if a gray cloud swept over and planted itself right over Mr. Garrett's classroom and never left. He just didn't look happy anymore. Efren entered the classroom first. Unlike others around the school, this room stood bare, without any cheesy history teacher posters or bright bulletin boards highlighting student learning. Not here. Nada. Even Mr. Garrett's desk was bare, just the usual oversized mug of Starbucks coffee. Not waiting for the bell, Efren began copying down the homework. Article of the day. Same as yesterday. Everyone opened their assigned Chromebooks and began logging in. Mr. Garrett took his usual seat behind his desk. You all know the drill. Work on the typing tutorial if you finish early. With that, he went back to the same page of Sudoku puzzles from a week ago. Just as Efren positioned his fingers across the keyboard, a crumpled sheet of paper struck the back of his head. There was no need to look around or track the path it came from. This was just the way David preferred to communicate during class. Efren spread the paper across his desk, ironing it out as best he could. This particular note was an illustration, or master pizza, as David liked to call them. The artwork on the page showed Mr. Garrett slumped over his desk with his face soaking in a pool of drool. A stick-figure girl stood behind him with her fingers resting inside her triangle nose. The speech bubble above her said, "You forgot to assign us homework." It could only be one girl, Jennifer Huerta, David's new political enemy. Efren pressed down on his temples and buried the drawing under his Chromebook. He then turned back and shot his head at wide, grinning David. As much as he loved hanging around with David, Efren chose to spend his morning nutrition breaks at his favorite place at school, the library. Like his bathtub at home, it was a place where he could open a book and let himself be taken anywhere he wanted. Here, Efren felt free. Here, there was never anyone he needed to bathe or help with homework. Here, he didn't have to take on security watch and sit by his apartment window at night, waiting for Amma to make it home safely from work. Here, it was all about his escaping into other worlds, whereas everything else ended in smiles. Efren unzipped his backpack and took out the books he'd tuck away at the bottom. He then slipped them into the weathered empty Amazon box marked return, seated outside the library door. He stepped inside and greeted Mrs. Ornelas, the only school librarian in the entire world with a habit of talking louder than the students. She looked up from her messy desk and waved with a smile. Of course, Efren smiled back as he headed toward the fiction area, second row, top shelf, the same exact spot he'd left off the last time he was here. Without missing a beat, he began running his fingers along the spine of each book until something called to him, and something always did. This time, his fingers paused over a teal book with orange letters. The House on Mango Street. He thought about Highland Street, about the fruit trees, and for a split second wondered if this book might somehow be about his own neighborhood. He pictured little kids in diapers chasing chickens running around freely, while slightly older kids played school on the porch or made mud pies to share with the entire neighborhood. Yeah, right. Efren scoffed at the idea. That's an amazing book, a voice said behind him. It was Jennifer Huerta, the only other student who checked out as many books as Efren. She stood beside him, her long wavy hair held tightly in a braid. It's about a girl named Esperanza trying to discover who she is and where she belongs in the world. It's my favorite book ever, Jennifer said, clutching a Lord of the Rings book to her chest. Efren's eyes went wide. Really? Yeah, the girl in it sounds a lot like me, even uses Spanglish once in a while. Efren cringed. My 5th grade teacher, Mrs. O'Neill, used to get mad if we spoke that way in class. Why? What's it to her? Efren liked the sight of Jennifer. She had a bit of attitude he hadn't seen before. I don't know, maybe because she couldn't understand what we were saying? Jennifer's laugh surprised Efren. They'd been in the same honors classes since last year, and he'd never heard her laugh before. What's your favorite book? She asked. Probably Maniac Magee. Maniac Magee? I haven't read that one. Yep, it's amazing. It's about this kid stuck between two different worlds that don't get along just because of the color of their skin. And at the end, he actually... Sorry, I don't want to spoil it for you. Oh, don't worry about me. I always read the endings first. Wait, what? Yeah, I like to read the endings first. That way I know that there's a happy ending. Otherwise, the books are too suspenseful for me, and I bite my fingernails until the tips begin to hurt. She laughed. I'll probably have to wear gloves on the school's election day. Efren's mouth decided to betray him. I'm sure you'll do great, he blurted out. Oh, Jennifer. Oh, excuse me. Oh, thanks, Jennifer answered, a look of surprise on her face. But I don't have my hopes up too high. So why are you running? I was home watching a report on how undocumented families were being separated. They had kids in cages, like animals, and that really hurt. She looked back at Efren. You ever buy eggs at the store? Yeah, sometimes. Amma sends me to the corner market whenever we're out. You ever notice the labels? Efren shook his head. Most of the eggs say they come from cage-free chickens, which means people in this country worry more about chickens than they do about undocumented children. It makes me feel so... Her eyes welled up, and she stopped to look around and make sure nobody else was close enough to hear her. Then, with her head down, as if she was ashamed, she added, Mi mama no tienen papeles, which means my mama doesn't have papers. Don't worry, my parents are here legally too. I swear, I won't tell anyone. Jennifer smiled ever so slightly. I know you won't. That's why I told you. My mom says I'm a great judge of character. Says I'd make a great juez someday, and I'll have my own courtroom. She reached into her backpack and held out a brown paper lunch bag. The words "Somos semillitas" were neatly written across the front. We are seeds? I don't get it. It's a Mexican saying. Nos quisieron enterrar, pero no sabían que éramos semillas. Efren rubbed his lower lip. They tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. Yeah, that's it. My mom likes to remind me of this every day. She's right, though. That's why I'm running. Figured I can make a difference, even if just at school. Efren smiled wide. I like that. I think your mom is right. You'd make a great politician. She laughed. Well, I think you'd make a great school president. Efren's cheeks turned bright red. Thanks, but I'm just campaigning for David. Too bad. Losing wouldn't hurt as much if it was against someone like you. Again, Efren's mouth continued on autopilot. I think you'd make a great president. Immediately, he covered his mouth with his hand. Jennifer smiled and pulled her bright pink rolling backpack in close to her. I better go, she said. Han is waiting for me. And before leaving, she leaned in and gave him a quick hug before vanishing behind the next aisle. Efren directed his gleaming eyes back at the book in his hands. His ears perked up. We didn't always live on Mango Street. He leaned up against the shelf and began reading. The first page. Jennifer is right. This book was different. Efren thought about all the different neighborhoods he'd lived in. There had been a lot, but Highland Street had eventually become his home, just like he imagined Mango Street had for the girl telling the story. He read on. But even so, it's not the house we thought we'd get. He heard Appa say this very same thing many times. Efren closed the book. He'd hit the jackpot today. There was no need to keep on searching. Efren looked at the time. Nutrition break was almost over, and he headed to the checkout desk where Miss Ornelas sat with a big jug of coffee beside her as she repaired a torn page from a graphic novel. Hi, Miss Ornelas. Oh, Efren, how's my #1 reader? Efren shrugged. Pretty good, he answered. He held up his book. I'd like to check out this book. She looked up. Just one? Yeah, just one today. At lunchtime, Efren's friends picked at their food, tossing out anything they couldn't coat with tahini chili powder. After that, Efren and Abraham jostled for a better position to watch David showing off his skills on his new Nintendo Switch, which he'd gotten a month ago for his birthday. Both boys cringed with every strike from Charizard, as if it were them dueling it out. If only Appa's boss had come through with the bonus he'd promised him for finishing a recent construction job early. Then he would have been able to keep his promise and buy Efren his own device. That dream, however, burst along with Appa's appendix. Not only did the bonus not happen, he also got fired from that job after taking too long to heal. There was still a scar on his lower abdomen that Appa liked to call his zipper. Claimed it was where he kept his wallet and keys. Efren sat and watched as David claimed yet another victory. Don't worry, guys, said David. When I become school president, I'm going to return the Chromebooks they assign us and buy switches for everyone instead. Abraham turned and raised his hand high in the air. Efren high-fived him back, like it could really be that easy, he thought. David shut the game off and slipped his device back into his backpack. You guys want to help me after school? Help with what? Asked Abraham, picking at a scab on his elbow. Make posters and flyers for the election. Sorry, I've got soccer practice. Our coach makes us run laps if we're late, Abraham said. David's goofy grin vanished. Come on, how about you, Efren? Well, since I did walk to school alone, I'm guessing it's all right if I stay late and walk home alone too. But I better leave my mom a message. Can I borrow your phone? David's grin reappeared as he handed over his phone. Great. We'll start with the bathroom posters. Efren and Abraham turned to each other. Bathroom? They asked in perfect sync. Can you guys think of a better place? He raised his arms as if he were spreading out an invisible set of plans. I was thinking of placing one in each stall, maybe even over the urinals. Efren closed his eyes and laughed. An hour and a half later, after leaving a message for Amma, he and David were up to their elbows in paint. The ASB leadership room was huge and had everything a future president-elect could ever need. Rolls of poster paper, glue, popsicle sticks, straws, markers, tempera, paint, watercolors, foam, paintbrushes, even foam brushes. Efren ripped off another yard of yellow paper from the roll. Are you sure about this? Yeah, haven't you ever heard of a word-of-mouth campaign? Once a few kids see our posters, they'll start telling their friends, and presto, free publicity. David held out his completed poster. Even with the uneven letters slanting to one side, the caricature in the center showed an uncanny similarity to Jennifer Huerta. David pointed to the slogan beneath the drawing. Check it out. Don't go number 2, vote for David, and go number 1. Dude, get it? Number 2, number 1. The posters are going to go inside of each stall door. Efren stood there dumbstruck. Oh, well, I guess if your goal is to get people talking, then yeah, why not? David's face lit up. The only problem is, which one of us is going to sneak into the girls' bath? Not me, exclaimed Efren, cutting off his friend. You have to. Girls go in there in huge groups, and I need their votes. The future president can't be seen inside the girls' room. What would people say? Efren was about to argue, but caught himself. What was the point? A best bud is a bud for life, and Efren wouldn't have it any other way. Fine, but you owe me big time. Before long, Efren found himself standing outside the girls' bathroom, a roll of painter's tape hanging from his forearm. There better be some awesome perks coming my way after you win. David smiled and nodded, his head bouncing up and down. Efren searched the hallway for signs of anyone coming. No one. The coast was clear. Well, here goes nothing. The entranceway pretty much resembled that of the boys' restroom, minus the nasty smell of day-old pee. Efren rounded the corner. Whoa! This bathroom was twice the size. Twice the number of sinks, twice the number of stalls. David, you wouldn't believe it in here. It actually smells clean. Dude, hurry. The after-school program usually does a bathroom break about now. Efren hurried over to the handicapped stall at the end. He opened the door, and his eyes went wide at what he found inside. Oh, man, you won't believe this. Believe what? Asked David. Efren ran outside and grabbed David by the sleeve, practically pulling him out of his sneakers. Come inside, he said, leading him to the furthest stall. This better be important. David froze as Efren opened the door opened. No way, this was my idea. An impressive caricature of David drawn on yellow poster paper hung over the toilet. Go number 1, vote Jennifer Huerta, or go number 2 and vote for David Warren. David pointed to the drawing. Look at that nose! I look like that bird on the Fruit Loop cereal. Efren did his best to stifle a chuckle. David shook his head. This is just wrong. But kind of funny, right? David let out a breath. I'm going to fix it. He reached into his backpack and rummaged through a mess of papers. What are you looking for? Whiteout. I'm going to make the nose smaller. I don't know, dude. The bylaws say that messing with a person's campaign poster could get us disqualified. By what? Bylaws. The rules Miss Salas went over, remember? David's shoulders dropped. Can I at least make the diamond earrings larger? I don't want people thinking I'm cheap, too. You really think that? Without warning, David clamped his hand over Efren's mouth. Shh! I hear someone coming. Both Efren and David barricaded themselves inside the stall. David whispered into Efren's ear and pointed. Our feet. Efren nodded, and the boys squatted over the toilet seat, hands stretched along both walls for balance, ears wide open. A stall door opened and slammed shut. The boys stayed perfectly still, each holding his breath to keep quiet. But what came next was a surprise to both of them. It was a girl, crying. Come on, said David, gesturing with his hand. The door creaked and the boys inched their way toward the door, but Efren froze at the stall where the girl had entered. Under the door, he could see a bright pink rolling backpack. Jennifer's. Efren didn't know her too well, but this didn't stop him from wanting to knock on her door. But what could he say? Hey, Jennifer, I was just a few stalls away and couldn't help but notice you crying. David waved his arms frantically to get Efren's attention. There wasn't much for Efren to do but follow David's lead. It was about 5 o'clock by the time the two boys parted ways along Highland Street. David was on his way to the Boys and Girls Club for some sort of foosball tournament, while Efren hurried home before Max ate both their shares of dinner. Reaching under his collar, Efren unfastened the key from the safety pin and let himself in. Amma, I'm home. He headed toward the restroom, the only other room in the studio apartment. Sorry I'm late. I had to help David with his campaign poster. He knocked 3 times. Nothing. Amma? He went in. No one was there. He scanned the kitchen table. There were no placemats or plates or any other sign that dinner had even been started. It wasn't like Amma to not cook, not with her dislike of eating out. She always said that you couldn't trust strangers to wash their hands before handling your food, and that there was no sense in paying for something she could make cheaper and better. Maybe she'd taken the minions down to the school playground to get the Wiggles out of their system, especially Max. He didn't do well in confined spaces. The mattresses filled the living room space, which seemed odd because Amma usually lined them up against the wall during the day. Efren shrugged. Maybe she'd forgotten. With a running start, he tucked his chin in and flipped onto the pile of mattresses. Finally, he could enjoy some peace and quiet. He reached into his backpack and pulled out his new library book. Half a chapter in, hunger made his belly quake. Efren got up and looked around. Strange. Very strange. He opened the front door and felt a cold breeze coming in. He scanned the pile of winter jackets behind the door. A different feeling now filled his stomach. Something was wrong. Amma never let anyone, including Appa, leave the house without a jacket, if there was even a single gray cloud overhead. 2 steps at a time, Efren zipped downstairs toward the school playground. The cold chill caught him off guard. He looked up at the setting sun and then around at the last of the neighborhood kids straggling home. Soon the riffraff, or chusma, as Amma liked to call them, would begin trickling out, and it was best to try to avoid them. Efren picked up speed, stopping only as he approached the school's closed gate. He looked down at the heavy-duty padlock, his mind now doing sprints. Other than the food truck, corner market, and laundromat, there was nowhere else Amma could have gone. He did a quick check of the playground, then raced back home. He stopped short of his front door and bent over, trying to catch his breath. That's when he discovered a paper caught in the metal screen door. He stuck his pinky finger between the metal designs and pushed the paper out. It was a note from Donna Chana, the Tupperware lady a few doors over. The slip read, La Sar Solomon de mi dijos los niños están bien. It didn't make sense. Why would the little one's teacher, Miss Solomon, drop them off there? Amma should have picked them both up hours ago. With his heart thumping, Efren bolted over. However, before he could even knock on Donna Chana's front door, Max and Mia came rushing out, their arms outstretched. Max's itty-bitty arms wrapped tightly around Efren's waist while Mia tried climbing up to hug him. As relieved as Efren was to find the twins, the question still remained. Where was Amma? The answer lay somewhere in Donna Chana's worried look. Mijo, les hice un caldito de pollo bien rico, por favor, entra? A bowl of warm chicken soup sounded great. Normally, he would have politely waited for her to insist, but something about her voice made him nervous. There was something she wasn't telling him. Sí, gracias, he said, determined on finding out what. The inside of her studio was pretty much a mere image of where Efren lived, only instead of piled mattresses, the entire room was surrounded by stacked boxes. Donna Chana was on her way out. The only thing not packed was the television, which sat across a floral sofa bed that looked like it had been picked off some highway curb. Efren, Max, and Mia crammed around a table so small that it made the entire kitchen feel much larger than theirs. Donna Chana reached into a box, pulling out a plastic spoon for each of them. The soup was great. Maybe not Amma great, but enough to help calm his nerves. Enough to gather the courage to finally ask, Donna Chana, where's my Amma? Instantly, her face tensed. Max, Mia, ¿por qué no se van a ver la televisión? When it came to watching TV, they didn't need to be asked twice. That left Efren alone with Donna Chana at the dinner table. Efren braced himself. Mijo, Donna Chana said, her voice high and tortured. Tu ama, she called. La migra, la tien. Los descardos de ice. La recogión buscados trabajo e una fábrica. Efren's body chilled to its core. He heard the word ice whenever someone brought up immigration, especially in the same way kids talked about El Cuico, the Latino version of the boogeyman. He'd grown up hearing about it, fearing it. It made sense to arrest bad people, but Amma? She never did anything wrong. Y Appa, does he know? Efren asked. Not yet. He was out on a job. I left a message for him to call me. Donna Chana studied Efren's pale face. Mijo, everything is going to be okay. Efren turned toward his brother and sister and then back to Donna Chana. We have to get her back. Donna Chana's worried look returned. Yes, claro que sí. Your father will get her back. You will see. Efren wanted to believe her, only he kept thinking about the neighborhood gossip he'd picked up from a few of Amma's comrades at the communal laundromat. Stories about nearby factories getting raided and somebody, usually someone's distant cousin, getting caught and deported. From what Efren could gather, the word ice wasn't something people liked to talk about, at least not around kids. He wondered what the comrades would say now. He imagined them blessing themselves, imploring La Virgin Maria and any of the long list of patron saints to pray for Amma's safe return. Efren turned his attention away from the yellowed apartment walls and watched Donna Chana tap her purple nails against the table. He had heard of Donna Chana's repeated attempts to stop smoking. The smell of smoke had apparently slowed her Tupperware sales. Seemed people didn't want to buy items reeking of cigarettes. Now, she reached into her back pocket and pulled out a silver lighter. Efren was about to hold his breath when she reached for a glass candle from a kitchen cabinet with the image of some saint he didn't recognize. She placed the veladora down on the edge of the table. Efren watched her struggle with her lighter. Ay, que cosa tan intual, she said, getting up and struggling to light the candle over the stovetop. Useless. That was exactly how Efren felt.